Well, hello and welcome again to the Vortex Garage for our weekly update. So I'm just kind of putting away a few tools. We're going to take you outside and show you the progress we've made on the long tractor. All right, so as you can see, we've got our seat plate mounted up. This is our adapter plate. This is where the slider mechanism for the seat goes. And as you can see down here, we've got an adapter piece that we made. And we're going to go ahead and switch over and show you just a couple clips of us kind of putting that together and how we did it. All right, so here we're working on an adapter piece for our seat for the long 460 DT tractor. So we're basically adapting that universal fit seat so it'll fit on our tractor. So I found this nice thick piece of steel in the garage. It's just some scrap stuff I had laying around, so we're going to use that. I measured out the 4 holes of where the original seat mounts on the long tractor and center punched them, and then I'm starting with a small drill bit, drilling through, and then stepping up to a big one that'll fit the bolts that go in. So we're going to use the stock original bolts for that, and this is about as thick as the base of the original long seat frame. So that'll work out really well. What I'll do then is take our seat frame adapter for our universal seat and go ahead and bolt it in the center of that. If I want, I can cut the ears off of this. I've kind of left it in case I ever want to mount something to the edge. We'll see. There's plenty of room there, so I might just leave them, but I could always trim this off to make it nice and neat. But anyway, I'll get this all drilled and mounted up, and then that should allow our seat to sit. Now, the only thing I'm worried about is in the center, I might not be able to have bolt heads underneath there to bolt this on. So I'm going to have to look at, do I need to raise it up? So I've got some square tubing, and if I need to, I can cut these out and drill them. The only downside of that is I'd have to get longer bolts here. Additionally, I could always, if my bolts are too long to kind of go through here, I can step them up, and if I want to add height to this too, raise this up. So I haven't quite decided if I need to use this. First step, I wanted to go ahead and drill this plate out, and then I'll take it out to the tractor and kind of see what we have to deal with. So I'm just going to get the mounting holes done here, and then if it's easy, I'll just be able to slap this on, bolt it all together. If not, I'll have to figure out where I want to mount my square tubing for some risers and just drill through those and get the longer bolts that I need. So drilling the holes, again, start with a small bit and step up to a larger one. Now when you do the larger one and it kind of gets to the end, if you've done a pretty big step, sometimes these bits, as they start to cut through, they'll grab. And I'm just using a hand drill. And if you're using a hand drill, when it grabs, it can try to wrench out of your hand, so you got to be careful about that. And the idea here too, I don't want to overheat the bit, so I'm using some WD-40 to lubricate it and cool it. And I'm pausing from time to time. I'm not just wrenching through them all and jamming it in there. I'm letting the drill bit do its work without putting additional stress on it, letting it cool off, and keeping an eye on it. Right now, there's absolutely no signs of overheating, no discoloration, and the tip is still nice and sharp. So if you treat the tool well, it'll last longer. If you sit here and just try to wrench through them, I've seen it before, you're going to overheat that bit and it's going to actually start to melt. And once it starts to do that, it's just going to destroy that sharp edge and it'll never work again. So, obviously drill bits are consumables, but you want to make them last as long as possible. So. There we go. Go ahead and put a little more oil on our drill bit. We'll go ahead and let it cool off. All right, so here's our adapter plate that we made. I went ahead and cut the edges off, dressed up the cuts with a grinder, and then hit it with a flat disc just to clean up the surface rust that was on this old piece. And we got it clean enough. This is just the actual coating that was on the original steel. So we're going to hit it up with some primer and satin black to keep it from rusting, and go ahead and mock it up on the tractor and see if it fits for us. All right, so here's our adapter plate all finished up. And this is how this will sit on it. So we'll go ahead and get that bolted up. Okay, so that sort of brings us to where we are now, and essentially we've got it bolted up here, and I'll kind of come down and show you how it connects up. You can sort of see the original bolts here, and then underneath there was enough clearance to run those bolts up underneath. You might not be able to see, but I had to add a washer in between this plate and the bottom plate that I have here. And the reason for that is the tolerance was so close here, I wouldn't actually be able to have the slider mechanism go. They would hit the main bolts. So at any rate, we were able to overcome that by just putting a little washer underneath here, as you can see there, and also a corresponding one on these. We got just enough threads here. These can't poke too far up because they would hit the base plate of the seat, but the base plate of the seat does have an arched piece here, so these can actually be fairly long, about inch and a half. So this should fit on just fine. So we're about ready to give it a test fit, but as you can see, it's nice and steady. Even with full weight on it, it shouldn't be a problem. This is a pretty thick piece of steel that we found. So looks like this is how we've made our universal seat fit universally. And we're going to go ahead and slide the seat on and see if it works out for us. So I'm going to Okay, so we got our seat here. Now we basically just got to get the lip of our slider onto our bracket here. Okay, and there we go. All right, now once we get it going, we're going to need to pull up our adjuster. All right, and that does slide on. Okay, so now we've got it adjusted down. Let me grab my camera here. Okay, as you can see, we've got it slid on. You can kind of see what I was talking about with the clearance there. It's very tight between the original bolts and this bracket right here. So that's why we had to raise it up with the washer. That was just enough to give us clearance. And I just got to come through here. There's a bolt right back here that winds down, and that prevents us from moving the seat too far forward or back and sliding off our track. So that's pretty important. Okay. All right, we got that down. Let's go ahead and give it a shot. All right, we'll go ahead and climb up in. And oh yeah, much better than last time. Much better. Zip that up a bit. It's getting a little bit chilly out. Okay, where's our adjuster? Here it is. All right, so that's all the way back. Okay, and as you can see, we got plenty of room to reach our brake and clutch. Reaching the steering wheel is pretty easy. Reaching the top of the steering wheel, I got to lean forward a bit, but that's with it all the way back, so that's good. All right, so that's pretty much all the way forward, and definitely a little tighter fit for me, but should work pretty good for most anybody. And I can reach the top of the wheel without leaning forward at all, so that's good. So that's perfect. That looks like I'm going to be most comfortable somewhere in the middle of our travel. So that's pretty good. So another thing, put a vice grip on our ignition switch here. This was already pretty mangled up. I did take it apart and look at it, and it's a pretty big piece, and it costs about $75 for a new one. So I'm going to see if just rigging it up like that'll work. Now, a little bit of something. Let me show you. Turn our key. All right, as you can see, there's some life to our tractor here. So I did validate that the switch works. Our ignition key switch works as it should. And I put a charger on the battery. I took the battery out. It looked like it was taking a charge, but it's not holding a charge. Didn't think that it would. But I went ahead and put a charger on it and was able to just get the motor to spin a tiny bit. So basically what that did, it validates that the starter works, the main electronics work, things light up on the dash. So, our ignition switch works. So now I know that those general systems are working before I go out and buy a battery for 150 bucks. So probably should have picked one up beforehand because I would have gotten further, but it is what it is. We'll go ahead and cover some of the additional work that we've done on the tractor to get us to that point, because I wasn't even willing to do that until I did some basic things. And of course, before I had done anything, I made sure that it was in neutral and made sure I had access to the clutch and the brake. But a couple things. We went ahead and replaced the oil. We got a new oil filter on here. So there's our new Napa oil filter. Just everyone's aware it's part number 1452 is for that filter, and it fit right on. And that's to replace the Fram PH8A that's usually on there. Okay. Went ahead and kind of degreased and washed it a bit. So it's still a little dirty, but it looks a lot better than it was. We got rid of the nest that was in there. Filled it up with 7.5 quarts of 15W40 oil. I checked that there's hydraulic fluid in it, and there is, but I'm probably going to go ahead and service that still, which again, this is one reason I'm not quite ready to start it. Same with the coolant. Let me just come around the other side and show you. All right, so on this side, things that we took care of, we went ahead and swapped out our fuel filters. So there's one of them, and the second one is up behind here. And again, we kind of degreased here. We made sure all the linkages are working, so our hand throttle is working, our fuel shutoff is connected and working. So we're getting ever so closer to starting it. Up next, we do have to bleed the system since we replaced the filters. I just haven't done that yet. We did go ahead and check the tank. There wasn't much fuel in it, but we went ahead and drained out the little bit that was left. So that was a good sign. I was really afraid I'd find just gallons of old diesel in there that have to be drained and dealt with, but just a little bit, which was cool. So we're going to get some fresh diesel in there. We'll bleed the system, get it primed up, and then that'll probably be our next stage, and we'll be ready to see if it'll fire. Okay, so where does that leave us for now? Well, the positives, we've got the fuel system ready to go. All we got to do is get some fresh diesel in it and prime it and bleed it. We've got oil and filter installed, and everything looked good there. There were no surprises. We've got our seat installed, and that's ready to go. We're able to get a slight charge on the old battery, just enough to validate that we've got power flowing through and that all the systems function as normal, all the safety switches and whatnot. So I think at this rate, we're getting close to ready to start this. Unfortunately, we're out of time today, so we're going to have to postpone that to the next chance we get. But what we'll have to do, we'll go ahead and get a battery. We'll go ahead and make sure our cooling system is serviced, make sure our hydraulic system's got fluid in it, it's not leaking or anything weird, and get some fresh diesel put in it, get that system bled out, and we'll go ahead and see if it'll start. So, I think we're making good headway, and we're getting close. So unfortunately, this update, we're not ready to fire it off, but we're getting there. So hopefully we'll have that ready to go soon. As for other Vortex Garage updates, well, it's going to be a short update for today. Again, just didn't have a lot of time. But I will say in the next couple days, we expect to have part 1 of that WJ Driveshaft Special uploaded. It's fairly long. It's going to be about 50 minutes, but it covers the different types of drive shafts you'll find, how to rebuild the front ones, and then part 2 is just going to be installing the front and rear and getting those knocked out. So, but I'll look for that in the next couple days. Should be pretty cool. So anyway, that's it. Just a short update today, but I hope you enjoyed, and stay tuned for more stuff coming on Vortex Garage.